Watson?
Who is Mario Cuomo.
Correct.
When it comes to artificial intelligence, are we standing at the precipice of a new frontier yet again? Or is it only Hollywood make-believe? Well, today on Context, we speak with scientists and educators who say artificial intelligence is expanding into our everyday lives in a big way. I'm Sheldon Neal. Welcome to Context. Listen, we've got a great AI show for you, but first,
I have reached out to many of the religious leaders across the country, including the Canadian Council of Bishops, and spoken to them about how we got to this place and the decision that we've taken, encouraged them to work with their individual organizations and churches across the country to let them know that this is about the activities of the organization and the job description. This is not about beliefs or values. This is about the activities of the organization, what they are doing as an organization, and what the job description of the young people will be. And so we're comfortable that the majority of organizations across this country should have no problem filling out the attestation.
That's Patty Hadju, Minister of Employment, Workforce and Labour, speaking about the Canada Summer Jobs Program and the new policy required for organizations to sign an attestation in order to receive funding. That's got a lot of faith-based organizations concerned, saying it violates their freedom of belief and freedom of conscience. Well, here to talk about the issue from Ottawa are Peter Stocklin of Convivium Magazine, Reverend Dr. Andrew Bennett, and Andrea M. Rosick of the think tank Cardis.
Andrew, I'd like to start with you.
Cool.
You said when this story was breaking before Christmas that it was, as bad as it might look to a lot of people, it was actually a golden opportunity for faith groups to redefine the public square as they chose. How has that gone? Have, in fact, faith groups stepped forward?
In Toronto last week, over 80 faith leaders, I believe, came together at the instigation of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. Many of them signed a document asking the Prime Minister to reconsider this, that this is fundamentally a violation of fundamental freedoms in the Charter. And then the people that engaged in this were from a very, very broad cross-section, from a variety of different Protestant denominations, the Coptic Orthodox Church, Reform rabbis, conservative rabbis, people from a variety of different traditions who said, enough is enough. The government is not going to dictate what we should believe. They cannot compel belief, nor can they use the Charter to stipulate how we should or should not exercise our fundamental freedoms.
It's ostensibly about pro-life groups, aimed at pro-life groups, on the basis of a claim that abortion is a Charter right.
We definitely have a situation where the Prime Minister is referring to rights that are not enshrined in our Constitution or in the Charter, and can't be based on the Morgentaler decision as we read it, at least. And I'm concerned, in fact, that this movement to refer to abortion rights actually pushes us from a place of discussion around the nature of a choice, a decision that women have, into a rights domain, and that's purposeful on the part of abortion activists.
Let me ask you, the deadline obviously for these applications for the summer jobs are this week. The government has made it clear, despite its clarifications, it's not backing down. Where do faith groups go next? What's the next step for them, Andrew?
Well, faith communities should not back down. I think there are two options in my own mind. One is you fill out the form and you do not sign the attestation, and you submit it, and you challenge the government to deal with that. Another option is you don't participate in the Canada Summer Jobs Program, and you dig within your own community amongst donors, benefactors who might want to support internships for your particular organization.
And Andrea, working with the pro-life community as you do, being involved in that, what do you think pro-life groups should do?
Pro-life groups need to make this stand. This is a freedom of speech issue, and it extends into the churches, and any group that identifies themselves as anti-abortion or pro-life can't sign this particular attestation, as Andrew already said. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you to our partners at Cardis. Well, we contacted the PMO and Minister Patty Hadju's office, and while the PMO's office replied by email and CC'd Minister Hadju's office, we did not hear back. But check out our website for John Stackhouse's commentaries on this issue and let us know what you think on our Facebook page. Well, we return now to our look at the impact artificial intelligence is increasingly having on our lives. Well, when you hear the term artificial intelligence, what comes to mind? Robots taking over the world, or perhaps worse? Well, here to help us understand this ever-growing technology and what it means for our future is Alan Tapp, researcher with the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms. He joins me now from Montreal. Let's get into this. What exactly is artificial intelligence? Some say it's gender neutral. Some say it's way less advanced than media lets on. Even outspoken minds like Stephen Hawking suggest it's of very concern. What do you say?
Well, it's a little bit of all of this. Artificial intelligence is a big field. It started with the invention of computer. People were interested in having intelligent machine, and at the beginning it was a little bit disappointing. The machine were not so intelligent, but now with the advance of deep learning, we're making some very serious progress. There is some stuff which are now easy for us that would surprise people, but on the other side, there is some stuff which is actually very hard for us, and that would also surprise people. In terms of being a concern, well, yes, of course it is a concern, but like any very powerful technology, I don't think it is a concern in the sense of science fiction or the Terminator or something like that, or Skynet. I'm not at all worried about these things, but there is very concrete issue the society is facing with this advance of technology.
You talk about issues, and you mentioned some Hollywood movies there, which brings me to the type of theme of myths. What are the myths that surround AI?
There is a lot of myth in the sense that it's extremely hard for people outside of the field to know if something is actually very easy for AI or actually very difficult. For example, it used to be easy to play chess, but it was impossible to have a robot that would go to buy some milk on the store. So it's hard to really evaluate. And so there is not a lot of myth, but there is a lot of misunderstanding on the capacity. But in terms of a real myth, actually, there is one. People are completely convinced that all those machines cannot have any kind of emotion or humanities and things like that, and that they would take a decision which are counterintuitive to human person. But the thing is that right now we're dealing with machine learning, and when we train those systems, we actually train them on decision taken by human beings. And so what they actually do is they just replicate with the good stuff and the bad stuff, but they replicate those human decisions. And so even though the computer are not strictly speaking intelligent or emotive or anything like that, it's very easy for them just to mimic that in some sense.
Well, let's turn to something even really concrete. In some, it's said in some circles that it's big corporate government, hospitals, social media, the list goes on, that are increasingly turning to AI tools, but the tools have big blind spots. So what do they need to be careful of going down this road?
It's quite easy in many contexts to take a lot of data and train a system that will actually be much more reliable than a human being taking such a decision. Unfortunately, sometimes the data is not good, and sometimes the job is not done properly. And so it could be problematic if people put too much trust on some of those systems, because some are going to be very good, and many of them are going to be amazing, actually. But there is always this possibility that those systems could have some failure. And so we need to be careful with these things.
I want to slide this question in before we let you go. AI poses challenges to business, government, and privacy concerns come along with that. Over the next 10 to 20 years, in fact, nearly half of Canada's jobs are at a high risk of being affected by automation. How do we combat these challenges?
If you turn to a scientist, let's say a physicist, and ask him when is going to be the next solar eclipse, they're going to give you a very precise and reliable answer. If you turn to an economist, I'm talking about a good person, the one that is trained and know the science, and you ask them when is going to be the next recession, that might not actually be very reliable. Not because the guy is not good, but just because those kind of problems are very hard to predict. And so it is quite difficult to predict the impact on employment that we will have with those kind of automation. but there's no doubt that it will affect people's life and people's job. And I would say that it's 50% is kind of strange. I would say it's 100%. It's like everybody was impacted by internet in some way. And I think that AI will impact 100% of the job.
Oh, Alan Tapp, you've given us a lot to think about. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
That was Alan Tapp, researcher with the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms. Well, here with us now to give us a reality check on whether AI is all it is cracked up to be is Dr. Franja Franek, professor of computer science and software engineering. Welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's dig right into this. Amidst all the hype, the chatter of AI, where are we at its development today? Is it infancy, intermediate? Where are we on this development scale?
Sheldon, first I should kind of put my cards on the table.
Yes, put it on. Let's reveal it all together.
As I claim, I am a skeptical cheerleader for AI. I'm somewhere in between. It comes with the fact that I'm already through the third hype wave of AI. Right? Now, it's a great discipline. I could go into detail, explain why, and it has a big future, right? On the other hand, you know, the robots are not behind the corner.
Well, do we need a reality check with AI?
Absolutely.
And what does that look like?
So the first thing is, look, if somebody proves some mathematical theorem, nobody gives a damn, right? But this is too interesting and too important for so many people that it goes through the media, which actually makes the hype bigger and more pronounced, right? Everything goes through cycles. Everything goes through waves. Every discipline. AI is no different from it, right? But it's in eye of the public, right? And there are a lot of misconceptions in the media, right? So in both ways, they hype it too much, you know, the benefits, they hype too much the dangers, right?
What are your thoughts in terms of AI and its link to employment and possible people losing jobs because of that development?
Again, if the history is any sort of guide to us, look, when the mechanical looms came, right? You know, that put out of business so many people, right? You know, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when ice was delivered, right? You know, in the winter they cut the pieces of ice, stored it somewhere. In the summer they brought it to you, right? This is all out of business, right? But it's changing. We have more people working today than we had 50 years ago. I think that first it will be question of education. We'll need to do a much better job in education. We need to educate everybody, not just somebody, right? But you know, we'll need smart people all the time. The AI is by no way going to overtake us in not my lifetime, not in your lifetime, not in the lifetime of your children.
Okay, well, that's good to know, I suppose. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are breathing a sigh of relief. I want to say thank you, Dr. Franja Franek, for spending time with us. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Dr. Franja Franek, thank you so much for helping us dispel some of the myths regarding AI. Well, coming up, can artificial intelligence save someone's life? Find out how one company is working to prevent suicides by targeting social media and identifying high-risk areas.
You assaulted me again and again.
Coming soon to Context. The Me Too movement ignites the sports world as courageous athletes speak out against sexual abuse, bringing critical attention to its often ignored victims.
Well, Advanced Symbolics reports that it was the only organization that was able to accurately predict Brexit, the U.S. presidential campaign, and the 2015 Canadian federal election. CEO Erin Kelly joins me now from CBC Studios in Toronto. Erin, let's jump into this. Your company has been retained by the federal government to utilize AI, artificial intelligence, to help identify areas where someone may commit suicide. My question to you is, how can you predict that?
So, good question. The first thing we do, just to be clear, we're not looking at targeting individuals. We're looking at communities, and we've seen this in Canada where there are waves of suicide, like we saw in Cape Breton and in Saskatchewan and in some northern communities. And so what the AI does, the first thing it does, as we would do in any scientific research is we create a representative sample of that community. So you don't want to look at everybody who's on social media in that community because that sample would be skewed. So we create a representative sample so it looks like that population. And then we use topic modeling and other analytic techniques that the AI has been trained on to see where we might see indicators of suicide in that community.
And how accurate is your AI in predicting suicide? I know you and I spoke a little bit before we started this interview, and I'm someone who kind of survived and came through a suicidal kind of case. What is the research on this? What have you seen? Because it's oftentimes something that is so personal and kind of hidden, and maybe numbers and analytics can't reach. How accurate is your research on it?
Well, the research is very preliminary on this particular topic. Obviously, the AI has had huge success in other predictive endeavors. This is a project, it's a joint academic project with the University of Ottawa and the Government of Canada, where they have done some preliminary research that indicates to them that social media can be used to detect waves of suicide. Obviously, in order to do this cost effectively, they would need an AI that can read reams and reams and reams of data very effectively, because obviously time is of the essence in these things. So, this is a pilot project to see if the theoretical research that they've done could actually be employed on a countrywide scale. So this is quite unique in the world. So we don't have the results yet.
And take us through, I know you mentioned it's still preliminary, the process after your AI finds an area it suspects to be suicidal. Take us through that kind of breakdown element there.
So, the process is we create the sample, and what we've done is we've trained the AI on years and years of research on what suicidal conversations look like, and it's going out and it's looking for those. It's important to understand we're not collecting any personally identifiable information. This is really population level research. So you're not going to see counselors showing up at your door saying, we think you're having suicidal thoughts. That actually wouldn't be accurately done. What's going to happen next is really up to the Government of Canada. I think a practical application of it would be if we see indicators of suicide in a particular community, that we can then deploy resources into that community and with the intention of preventing those suicides. So predicting that they're going to come, being ready for it, because as you know, it really comes down to where can we allocate the budget to where it's needed and get counselors in those areas where we see increased risk.
Wow, this is very interesting. I'm wondering, and I know a lot of our viewers are going to be thinking the same thing, when should we expect this program to fully be implemented, and how can the public find out more?
That's a great question. Well, the project is expected to start in the spring, so in the coming months. It's a 3-month project. So I would say if you touch base with us again in June, July timeframe, that would be a good time to do a follow-up probably.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be with me, Erin. Really appreciate it, and thank you again.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Well, continuing the conversation, we're asking, what responsibility does technology have in AI? Well, James Kelly is the founder of Faith Tech. He joins me now in studio. Welcome, my friend. Let me ask you, let's start here. How do you personally define AI?
Yeah, AI is essentially machines imitating the way we think or behave. And there's mainly 3 categories. You have narrow AI, so that's things like when you go on Netflix and it says, hey, we recommend this show. That's just kind of narrow AI, or Facebook. Then you have general AI, and that's when artificial intelligence can do everything a human can do. That's where it gets a little bit more scary. And then the 3rd category is super AI, and that's really what we're all really concerned about, which is when AI goes beyond our understanding.
And how far are we from, even before we kind of jumped on air, we were talking about the midpoint of AI. How far are we in development in terms of years, and the super category as well?
So it sounds like, based on the experts, and they're the experts, they say as early as 20 years from hitting general AI, up to maybe 50 years. To get to super AI, we're quite a ways out.
Okay, good. And how do we use AI for social good? And drop us a line for those who don't know about the work you did with howtokillmyself.com as well, and how it all interacts.
Yeah, there is so much potential for good with artificial intelligence. And one of the examples is we discovered here in Canada, over 8,000 people a month search online how to kill yourself.
Wow.
And we just discovered the results were awful. A team got together, bought the domain howtokillyourself.org, and built a website all structured around, if you search, this is what I'm thinking, I want to end my life. Hey, let's build a website and build technology in such a way to help you overcome that, connect with somebody. And that's just using technology creatively, you know, to help us rather than harm us.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. And I'm wondering, can I and God coexist, especially when we talk about helping people and kind of reaching them at their point of need?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, there is actually a church in Silicon Valley just started a nonprofit, a church called The Way of the Future, and their God is AI. Now, it's a little out there and not a lot of people are behind it, right? But it's just proof that Silicon Valley and the tech world is even starting to think about AI as a God. Now, to be clear, God gives us a soul. And this is something artificial intelligence won't have. We believe God is the creator, right? And he created us to do great things. But the distinction is that AI is a thinking being, and it's not going to have a soul unless God breathes life into it. But that's going to be the distinguisher forever.
Wow, listen, there's so much more to unpack. Maybe we should take a lot of this to the web if you want to know much more. But James Kelly, founder of Faith Tech, thank you for spending time with me.
Thanks, Sheldon.
Coming up, Reverend Christopher Benek speaks to the questions around God and AI. Well, oftentimes it's easy to position science and faith at polar opposites of each other, but our next guest says science and faith are a lot closer than you think. Reverend Christopher Benek, chair of the Christian Transhumanist Association. He joins me from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Artificial intelligence and God, do they coexist?
Well, I would say yes, because I start from a theological premise that we are not God, and that means we are already God's alternative intelligence. So I don't think that artificial intelligence is, the word artificial is always helpful for our conversations.
Does the development of artificial intelligence, I wonder though, pose a threat to faith in God?
I don't think so, but I would say that any technology can be used for good or for evil. So I think that we have to be intentional about forming people to use technology for good.
And we talk about forming people using technology for good. You've said if the church, or rather the church is in trouble if it doesn't react to current AI trends. How should we, the church, be responding to AI developments?
If what we see coming out of major academic institutions as far as predictions on the impact of automation on the workforce is true, then yes, we should be concerned. They are predicting at least half of the workforce within the next 10 to 20 years to be turned over to automation, and so people would lose their jobs. So if pastors stand up in their pulpit and they see half of the people that are in their congregation, they imagine them unemployed, that'll have a dramatic impact on the church. I think to begin with, churches need to begin to just have the discussion. What can we do to help if joblessness comes? I think there's a huge opportunity for the church, probably the greatest since the Reformation, to actually be productive and live into their call to produce good in the world by helping people to understand what their vocations might be in the face of automation. But that is going to take some intentionality. It's going to take some collaboration, and it's going to take the church talking about these issues, which right now, by and large, they are not doing.
It's interesting. As an ordained elder myself, you have me wondering, I mean, why isn't the church talking about artificial intelligence?
I think it's ignorance mostly, but I also think there's a disconnect between technologists and the church. I entered into the first ever doctor of ministry program for the intersection of science and theology at Pittsburgh Seminary, and Pittsburgh Seminary was trying to address just this issue. There's this false dichotomy that's been created in society that tells people who are technologists or scientists that somehow they have to check their proverbial science card at the door when they walk into a church, and that's just simply not the case. If God is the God of all creation, then that includes science and technology as well.
Does AI position faith and the message of faith in God to be, I wonder, perhaps shared in advanced and unique ways never seen before? And if so, what would that look like?
My theological position is that Jesus has already won the victory, but calls us to participate in his redemptive purposes in the world. And so I think that we are part of who we are, as we're made to be co-creators in Christ. And that means, like a parent with a child, we are able to develop new things, create new things that help for the redemption of the world. And so I think the possibilities actually become limitless when you start to see all of the technology that is exponentially trending upward now. I think the potential is that if we have people who are formed in the image of Christ, that are seeking to do unto others, then I think we will move forward in a way that's productive. So what that looks like, I think, that is for the imaginations of the people who are building these technologies. But what I could imagine would be that we begin to use technology in just basic ways right now to help proclaim the gospel in ways that hasn't been before. So even just basic, when you look at social media, you see positives and negatives of social media. You can see how we've used technology to help impact people with the gospel. With AI, we have the opportunity then to actually look at all the knowledge that's out there and to help to develop tools that will help people to live into their vocation, to help them to help one another, and to help them to help recreate the world in a new creation that God may have for us. So certainly there are lots of ways that can be made manifest, but I think what we tend to do is we limit our understanding of how much God loves us. And I think when we start to dream a little bit and we start to recognize that God may have bigger dreams than even we could ever imagine for ourselves, then we recognize that technology and our technological development may be able to be far beyond what we have imagined for good in this world.
Wow, well, here's to dreaming then. Reverend Benek, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was Reverend Christopher Benek, chair of the Christian Transhumanist Association. He joined me from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, listen, my dear friends, Canada, I hope you enjoyed all of our discussion today, but listen, it doesn't have to end here. For more, why don't you visit the website contextwithlorna.com for much more discussion, extended interviews, and so much more. For now, we'll talk to you soon.